Lebanon's on the brink of bankruptcy. The economy nears total collapse, but no one agrees on how to form a government to fix the problem. I'm Imran Garta, and today on the Newsmakers we ask what it will take to end Lebanon's political deadlock. It can take a long time for things to happen in Lebanon, especially when it comes to politics. After the 2018 general election, it took Saad Hariri 9 months to form a government. In October, he resigned as prime minister after massive nationwide protests. And now the country is once again in search of stability. But deep divisions have meant that forming a new government has become almost impossible. In the more than 5 weeks since Hariri announced he was stepping down, very little progress has been made. The only thing is, time isn't on their side. With each day, Lebanon's economic crisis deepens. Every year, the nation accumulates more and more debt. And for the thousands who've been protesting for weeks, the only solution is a complete overhaul of the political system. But how? And would it work? That debate in a moment. But first, Haider Abbasi has this report.
Lebanon is paralyzed. 6 weeks of protest have shaken the small country. In this time, the Prime Minister has resigned and the economy is nearing collapse. But demonstrators seem determined to stay on the streets.
52 days and they haven't revealed one corrupt official. 52 days and they haven't revealed any corruption cases. The government, which has been formed now, is generic and is connected to the previous government. We will not accept this as people, and we will not accept this as revolutionaries.
The departure of Saad Hariri a month ago has triggered a political deadlock. Hariri had insisted on heading a government of technocrats, but his opponents are pushing for a cabinet of experts and politicians. Protesters want the entire political system overturned. That means getting rid of the arrangement where all sects are represented. Critics say sectarianism has enabled corruption and economic mismanagement. Decades of graft have led to the financial crisis, the worst since the start of the Civil War in 1975. There's a severe shortage of US dollars, which is affecting almost every part of life. Thousands of people have lost their jobs or had their salaries cut. Businesses have collapsed and hospitals are running out of supplies because they don't have the dollars to pay for imports.
We're on the edge. It's been like this for 2 months. Now we've reached the end of the road. It may come to a point where I tell my workers to go home. I close my factory and use the $500 I withdraw every week to eat and drink. We have children, you know.
If Lebanon wants to resolve this crisis, it needs a government to implement economic reforms. These changes are necessary if Beirut wants to receive international aid. But protesters insist they won't accept anything that resembles the current cabinet. Can a solution be found before Lebanon's economy collapses? Haider Abbasi, The Newsmakers.
Let's go to Beirut now, where we're joined by Jad Dagher. He's co-founder of the opposition Sabaa party. Also in Beirut is Alain Aoun. He's a member of the Lebanese parliament with the president's party, the Free Patriotic movement. And Mustafa Allouch joins us now from Tripoli in Lebanon. He's a former MP with the outgoing prime minister's Future Movement Party. Gentlemen, good to have you all on the program. Mustafa Allouch, it seems as if the politicians are trying to wait this out because nothing has moved forward since Saad Hariri's resignation.
Well, things have been moving around, but not forward. In fact, the things that Saad Hariri thought that they may move forward, especially concerning a non-political government or a mild political government with more specialists. did not move forward because the rest of the governing parties refused this option, though it is the request of the protesters for the last 1.5 months. Now he had to accept, because of what we were hearing and what we are seeing about the really the disaster concerning our economy, our social situation. Then he had to go to a concession, Saad Hariri, and the concession is based on a combined government between politicians and specialists, hoping that things will move forward from there on. Till now, things are, though many things have been solved. However, we cannot say that we are at the end of the road or the beginning of a new road unless we see the president calling for consultations and appointing a new prime minister.
Okay, Jad, there's political paralysis. I would love to be a fly on the wall behind the scenes within the corridors of power, but I'm not. Who do you blame for this current paralysis? The protesters went onto the streets. They made their demands clear. The politicians, the prime minister said, we're going to do something about this. But things, as we've heard from Mustafa, they're going around in circles rather than moving forward. Who do you blame for this?
Well, obviously, we blame the current political class, all of it, for the current situation the country is in. Mr. Allouch said that, they are hearing about the problems the country is facing on the economic and financial and fiscal level. It is unfortunate that they did not expect that. The country has reached a very serious situation. I think regarding the deadlock, it is clear that the current establishment does not understand the seriousness of the situation in terms of the public uprising. They are still in a phase of denial. I don't know when they will get out of it. Today, very shortly, things are going to escalate on the streets. People are very angry. We have two citizens who have committed suicide today, again, because of the current financial situation. The situation is very, very serious, and I don't know why they are still talking about whose share is going to be what, etc. Unfortunately, even the person they have, they have been trying to circulate as prime minister in terms of his name is not accepted by the public because he is a contractor which has had very large contracts with the establishment. So it is very unfortunate why the current people in power do not understand the importance of having an independent cabinet. An independent cabinet. We are not calling ourselves, I'm talking on our behalf, and actually most parties or political groups who are today on the streets, we are not calling for a cabinet in which we want to be part of. We are calling for a cabinet independent between and which is not taking part, not on the side of the protesters and not on the side of the political class, just technicians. Let's not call them technicians, but people who have skills and are not part of any political party to come take us through an interim period for the next 6 months. The cabinet we are calling for is just an interim cabinet who would organize new parliamentary elections and also try to stop the downward spiral in terms of the financial and fiscal situation.
Okay, so let me take one of the things that Jad said and pose it to Alain Aoun. Alain, do you feel like you and your colleagues are still in a state of denial about what's going on? That was the accusation from Jad. You're part of the political class. Are you still in denial about the gravity of the situation?
Not at all. I'm not personally at all in denial, and I'm acknowledging the fact that there is sort of a political earthquake that happened in Lebanon since October 17, and that everyone has to integrate this in his way of thinking and in the way of analyzing what happened and in the way of proceeding from now on, actually. And I guess that definitely no one can, that doesn't mean that there are not still people in the political class who live this state of denial. I agree. There are some, but some already have moved forward, of course, and took into consideration the huge changes that happened lately, actually. And now the challenge is not arguing about all these things. The challenge is to respond to the financial crisis and economical crisis, and at the same time also try to regain confidence of these people and of the street who showed that there is a lack of confidence in this political class to a certain extent, without me accepting the fact to generalize the accusations and everything that was happened, because not all politicians are corrupted and not all politicians are living a state of denial, and not all politicians disrespect the people's will, etc., etc. So we have to also be fair and objective when we talk about the political class and not condemn everyone. This said, the system has proved to have failed because it didn't.
Right. I want to add something to it, and then you can fold it into your response. Right. You have a lot of people on the street saying, we're fed up with all of them. So Saad Hariri stepped down. You know what? Next up, Nasrallah and also Alain Aoun. All of you, go. Are you open to that criticism?
Maybe there are some. Of course, there are people who say that. That's their right. Of course, they have the right to say whatever they want. But that doesn't mean that they are expressing the will of all the Lebanese people. No one can talk on behalf of all people. There are still political parties and that have their popular support. Any change of this has to be expressed in free elections where things might change, maybe, but then it cannot be just expressed by some parties in the street or. What I want to say is that if we want to be really fair and objective, we have to say that the street has this popular uprising has imposed himself as a major player today in the political spectrum, but at the same time, this also popular uprising cannot say that the political class or the existing parties or all of them have collapsed. No, they are still enjoying some popular support. They are not anymore exclusively representing the people, but at the same time, they still exist.
Okay.
So let's find a compromise.
Okay, so let's ask Jad about that. Okay, certainly. Alain, I'm going to give you a chance.
Consideration all this.
Right. Okay, so you want that compromise position, right? And I'm sorry for interrupting you. So Jad, let me bring you in here. Alain's saying it's unfair to label them all as corrupt and them all as politically and economically bankrupt because they still have legitimacy. He's arguing for a semblance of legitimacy at least. Do you agree with that?
I want to say something, first of all. We all need to understand and realize, especially the establishment, that this is a revolution. Now, some part of the establishments do not want to understand this. They think those are demands for reforms. And this is a very serious difference here. You see, if you as political parties, part of the establishment, think that people on the streets are calling for reforms now, then you don't understand the situation. The situation is what you were saying, sir, that people are saying we are fed up of doing protests for reforms. We have done that for the past 40 years. Now, people have died for this revolution. This revolution has martyrs today. People have been on the streets for 52 days. Some people sleeping on the streets for 52 days. They did not do that to have a new, beautiful cabinet. No. They are doing this because they want drastic change in this country. Now, what I want to clarify to Mr. Aoun, and this is very important, please, I am not on the screen today to show who is right and who is wrong. And this is not how we operate. We want to do something good for our country. What I am trying to explain here is that we do not have demands as people. We are offering a solution in line of what he was saying. It means today people are on the streets, they are saying go. How are we going to do that?
Okay.
In our opinion, we are offering a solution. The solution is a neutral cabinet, not part of the protesters or not representing the protesters nor the establishment.
I got it. Okay, so Jad,
to just handle an interim phase and then do those elections which he was talking about.
And that's understood very clearly. Alain, before I say goodbye to you, address the concept of this is a revolution, not a reformation. Address that for me before we say goodbye to you.
I don't mind that it's a revolution, but still it's not a coup d'etat. That means that any change it aspires to, it has to be through the institutions where you still have political parties. So in all cases, you need to compromise with what is existing unless you're able and you can do a coup d'etat and kick everyone out, which is not the case. That means that any change has to go through the constitutional process and through the institutions. And this is why I'm calling for a compromise with all people that have representativity. Okay. This is the way I see it going forward. It starts with the cabinet, of course, that would be trustful for the people. And right. At the same time, it might reach at some point new elections, but at some point, I don't know when we agree on a new electoral law.
Okay, Alain, it's been a pleasure having you on the Newsmakers. I thank you for taking the time to join us. We're going to say goodbye now to Alain Aoun and bring in Salim Mawad. He's a civil society activist and peace-building consultant. Salim, you've been listening to the politicians who preceded you. You're not a politician. Do you have faith in the current institutions, or do you want to chuck them all out and start afresh?
Yeah, I've been listening, and it's really quite absurd because, you know, they are belittling the intelligence of the public on the street. When Mr. Allouch talks about the fact that, you know, Hariri wants a cabinet, you know, that responds to the demand of the demonstrators, this is not very true at all, because when we're talking about, you know, a technical cabinet represented by technocrats, we don't want Hariri to be on the head of this government because, you know, he's part of the establishment. So this is a little bit absurd, you know, like, how can you talk about that? And when Mr. Aoun also is talking about, you know, how to respond also to the demands of the street, also, again, it's absurd because, you know, they are imposing themselves as, you know, the establishment, and they're asking us to renew for them the confidence. Whereas we know very well all this political elite, you know, since the end of the war and the Free Patriotic movement of Mr. Aoun after 2005 when they came to power, they're part of the establishment and they are in charge of the corruption itself. I have to stop, you know, at what Mr. Alain Aoun said also, because for me this is quite worrying, as if, you know, they are warning people that they have also their own partisans, you know, that they can take the street, which is very true. But they need to understand something that, you know, like, I mean, the masses on the street, they have their say on the matter, and we wish we don't get, you know, to a confrontation between one street and another, because, you know, in a way or another, they have to start listening, right, you know, to our demand.
Okay, Mustafa Allouch, the point being made there is that still the politicians are not listening to the demands of the protesters, and we have Salim saying that, well, Hariri didn't really respond to the will of the people. It wasn't as generous an act as you make it out to be. Respond for me.
Well, this is a wrong opinion, and I think when it is not up to anybody to say which is true or not, except in his opinion. Saad Hariri said that he will accept any prime minister who will respond to the demands, not only because it's a populist reaction, but he thinks that the only way to do some real progress and start solving the dilemma of our disaster now is through a technical government which is devoid of political affiliations.
But is that possible, Mr. Allouch? Mr. Allouch, sorry to interrupt you.
We have two types.
There's a slight delay, so that creates a bit of difficulty, right? But if you want to create a technocrat or technical government that's appointed by the current system, which is seen by the vast majority of people on the streets as a crony, sectarian, corrupt group of politicians, how are they going to create that technical or technocrat government? They can't, because they're only going to look after their own interests, and they're going to look after their own based on sect or class or whatever that might be.
Well, this is a dilemma. It is true. We have a parliament which is based on...
Go ahead, Mr. Allouch.
We have a parliament which is based on this system. definitely the system is not only corrupt, it's an impotent system. Let me say it. Probably not everyone is corrupt, but definitely an impotent is equal and sometimes worse than corrupt in solving problems. This is why I think there is a layout now with what's happening. If we go to a technical government, then the parliament will remain the same until you change the system and and go for new elections. So this is a way out for the whole system not to crumble all of a sudden. I know that the system is not working, the system is impotent, but at the same time, if you want to change, you have to change in this way.
Okay, so something that we heard from both Alain Aoun and Mr. Allouch, Salim, is that if you make dramatic change, everything will fall apart.
Really,
What do you think?
It is not true at all. And you know what Mr. Allouch is saying is quite appalling also to the intelligence of the people. You know, we are on the street, but we are not, you know, away from being experts.
Come on, don't say this
When he talks about an impotent system, please let me finish. Please let me finish. Please let me finish. We trusted them on the government, you know, and it was, yes, our choice, and we are responsible because we voted for them for 30 years. If the system is impotent after, you know, post-war Lebanon, it's because of the bad practice. Today, I want to stop at two things which are very important. The revolution is asking for a new political practice. The political practice, if Mr. Hariri is not interested in being a prime minister, he should say it out loud and clear and then start working on this basis. Second, you know, the President of the Republic, he has a constitutional obligation to start the consultation. What they are doing, they're trying to form the cabinet before they start with the consultation, which is anti-constitutional. And then again, this is the corrupt practice of politics in Lebanon. They had the chance to rule the country, they did. We'll see where we got. They should give us the chance, because the question that we need to be asking today, why don't they want an independent cabinet, is because the independent cabinet will work on two main things that we are claiming. A new electoral law out of the sectarian dynamic, and second, an accountability law for the Corrupt Act. And in this case, most of these political parties will be before the judge because corruption was not conducted and committed by somebody coming from Afghanistan.
Okay. Yeah, that's an interesting point. Okay, so let me take that.
Them, you know,
so let me take that. Salim, allow me to take that point and pose it to Jad. Jad, on this very program, since the protests broke out, we've covered the story. I mean, we were already having discussions on the situation in Lebanon while it was just deemed an electricity crisis beyond the hundreds of thousands of people taking to the streets. And every single person, whether they were inside of the system or outside of the system, would say, yes, it's a corrupt system, it's a corrupt system. Even the politicians, even the MPs would say, yes, it's a corrupt system. But not a single person was ever named as a corrupt person. These seem to be phantom people.
Exactly.
It's just a system that's corrupt, but there's no individual that's ever corrupt. Are we ever going to get to a point where we will name names and have people held to account individually for corruption?
Well, first of all, during the past years, a lot of people have been named. Of course, the only real authority that can name is the judiciary, which also has to be reformed at some point very, very soon. But the issue I want to focus on here is that what Mr. Salim was saying, I think, is very important. This revolution is also about the recovery of stolen assets of this country, or the looted assets, because this country has been looted. And today we have a record high debt level. And if we want to get out of this any time in our history, the issue of recovering stolen assets has to be given primordial importance, because, you know, money doesn't disappear. It is transported. It goes to somewhere else. And so the money is still there, and we need to go and see where it is. This has been done a lot in many countries, in tens of countries, and we are going to do it in Lebanon sooner or later. And this is exactly why the instinct of survival of the current political class is going to take us maybe to dangerous areas where they are not going to surrender easily. And let us be very clear, we know that the revolution is not a promenade. We are not going to have a very easy ride, but we are going to go with it to the end because we are losing our country. It is as simple as this. People are dying. People have left the country in hundreds of thousands. Families have been separated. So yes, and also one more thing I want to say.
Jad, I've got to wrap.
Even though Mr. Aoun has left.
Right.
Yes, we are not doing a coup. There is no worry about vacuum. We have a constitution. This is a country which has its constitution. It's a good constitution.
Right.
And we want to do it the constitutional way.
Okay.
What we want is
Listen,
a neutral
Jad,
cabinet.
I've got to wrap.
As simple as
I
this.
really
If
have
they
to wrap.
don't give it, people are going to be on the streets.
Okay. Jad, Mustafa, Salim, it's a sign of a good discussion that everybody's frustrated that we didn't have more time to finish the discussion, but I thank you all for joining us here on The Newsmakers. We will continue this discussion sometime very soon and obviously earlier on Alain Aoun as well. I thank you all. Bye-bye, gentlemen. Thank you for watching. We will see you next time. Bye-bye.